Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. Excuse me. Thank you, Dato Wei Chongbeng, for your welcome remarks, and the Honourable Minister for really an excellent keynote address. My real pleasure as Chairman of Pacific Basin Economic Council to lend our support to this wonderful event. Pacific Basin Economic Council has been in business for 50 plus years to foster business links and trade links in the Pacific Basin. Never before has connectivity, collaboration, and trade be more important. We see all the challenges the world is facing post-COVID, the possible changes in globalization, digital transformation, the advent of ESG, and organizations like PBEC, we like to think are very important to enable countries and economies and companies to get together. I think it's a wonderful conference, and we're delighted to be a partner on this. I'd like to make a special thank you to our dear friend Tan Sri Michael Yeo, the president of the KSI Strategic Institute for Asia Pacific. The leadership in pulling together this event and the chairmanship of the organizing committee by Dato Wei Chongbeng really is remarkable. So why are we here? I think we recognize that COVID has acted as a massive accelerator on the digital transformation of the world. The coming together of digital transformation, the new ESG agenda, and the new focus on purpose of entities, purpose of companies, and values and ESG brings all of this together under one umbrella, which can really be called digital transformation. I really salute what the Malaysian government and economy is doing in this space. It's a real leadership position being taken. And ASEAN, of course, is also making huge strides. I'm a big supporter, and PBEC is a massive supporter of the concept of ASEAN, the world's fifth largest trading bloc, with over 450 million people, half of whom are under the age of 30. The potential for trade and connectivity is huge. And I'm delighted to see that the new ASEAN Digital Integration Framework action plan is in place. And some of those themes resonate with what we see in Hong Kong and other countries in the region. How in this very challenging world do we facilitate seamless trade? How can we digitally enable trade? Before COVID, the discussion of digitalization was in some ways a nice to have, and in some ways maybe an option for organizations to look at. Now, every single organization I speak to in my day job running KPMG want to know how and how quickly digital transformation can come in. And this is being applied to trade, everything from customs to supply chain. Yes, supply chains are being disrupted, but it also gives huge opportunity, particularly in Southeast Asia. Other big themes: how to protect data while supporting digital trade and innovation. And it's wonderful to see the frameworks being put in place to highlight the importance of data security and data governance. How to enable seamless digital payments. E-gateways and other ways. Will cash even be used in 5 years' time? And a very important point touched on earlier, how to broaden the digital talent base. Everything from raising the tide of everybody to have a good understanding of digitalization, to having real expertise, and how to develop the new generation to be very, very digitally enabled and to bring artificial intelligence and all other aspects of the fourth industrial revolution, how to bring those to bear. But when doing that, how to remember the importance of inclusion, diversity, and equity. And as said by the Honourable Minister, how to share the benefits for all and fairness for all. And last but not least, a very important point we see developing in ASEAN, and which PBEC is particularly supportive of, how to foster entrepreneurship. The future of startups, the future of high tech, but also the future of SMEs, and how they can play their part and be enabled in this digital journey. The different ecosystems in, for example, Shenzhen, Hong Kong, KL, how can these be pulled together and harmonized across the region? Digital technology is surely the way. So dear friends and colleagues, delighted to be here and to support any coordinated action we can do. Just to wrap up, everything is about governance at the end of the day. How we go about this is as important as what we achieve. And I'm sure with the right governance structures in place and the right leadership being provided by everybody on the conference today, the future of trade and the future of digitalization in the region is very secure and very exciting. I wish you all the best. I wish I was there in person, but due to quarantine restrictions, I'm stuck in Hong Kong. But I'll be with there in spirit at the dinner tonight, and I look forward to meeting in person next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Weir, for joining us on cyberspace. And indeed, we wish very much that you were here with us, but understandably, with restrictions in place, you're not able to join us. And thank you for touching on the points on the importance of digital trade, indeed for on customs supply chains, data security, and other matters that are important to facilitating prosperity in this region. Thank you so much. Next, we have a special keynote address on whether or not digitalization means globalization or deglobalization by none other than His Excellency Pascal Lamy, who's the president of the Paris Peace Forum and former Director General of the WTO.
Hello, everybody. And let me first thank my good friend, Michael Yo, for his invitation to share with you a few remarks on how does digitalization fit in the big picture, the big picture of intertwined geopolitical, geoeconomic turbulences which this world is presently going through. I think it's clear that we have entered globally into a much more turbulent period than the decades of the end of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century. The 2008 financial crisis, the COVID pandemic, the invasion of Ukraine in February this year, this growing US-China tensions, the food, the energy inflation, more extreme weather events are manifestations of this multiplicity of simultaneous crises which we have to consider. Hence, a world where gaps are unfortunately, in my view, growing. Mind the gaps was the main theme of the Paris Peace Forum, which I have the privilege to chair last year in 2021. My basic point today with you is that such a gap, such a potential fragmentation could also be true about digitalization if we do not care. Are we in for a digital globalization with its benefits, or with a digital deglobalization with its costs? I think the answer is a typical economist answer. It depends. It depends on the balance of forces, pushing on the one side for unification, and pushing on the other side for fragmentation. And this balance lies very much in our hands and in the capacity of countries, people, authorities of this planet to tilt this balance in the right side. The potential benefits of globalization need no advocacy, no pledging. They are those of further connections, connectivity, the advantages of speed, the benefits of exchange, the scientific progress that technology is bringing, the welfare increasing innovations in health, in education, in energy system, which digitalization authorizes. And I will not spend a lot of time on this, I think we all know that. But For these benefits to accrue, I think we need open and interoperable digital systems. In other words, we need a global digital ecosystem. If that is true, let's also be clear. We are, in my view, and I hope I'm not too pessimistic, we are nowhere near a global digital ecosystem, given the centrifugal forces that are at play in a number of areas, such as, for instance, data ownership, data protection, data accessibility, data circulation, data localization. In all these areas, we, I think, have distinctive collective preferences that are operating in various countries, cultures on this planet. What we see happening for the moment is a sort of coagulation of these different collective preferences along what is either a bifurcation or a trifurcation, a bifurcation between a US-led global digital ecosystem, a Chinese-led global digital ecosystem, and a trifurcation, if we add to that a possible third EU digital global ecosystem, and if we have 2 or 3 digital global ecosystems, they are not global. So this stems from deep philosophical, ideological differences, which I can sketchily summarize in saying that the US are led by the vision that data is merchandise, that China is led by the philosophy according to which data is a tool which is very useful for state control, and in Europe a vision according to which data is a sort of inalienable attribute of the individual, which of course has deep political ramification. This also seemed to show that the, for instance, impact of big tech, of huge platforms on the economy, on the society, on our lives, is perceived differently in terms of their market or societal power, whether you stand in Beijing or in Washington or in Brussels. And this, of course, has deep consequences on how to regulate digital ecosystems. And for these differences in collective preferences not to turn into what, in my view, would be a regrettable fragmentation, I believe we need a global approach, the purpose of which would be to combine properly convergence as a principle, as a plan A, which is what we've had in globalization of production systems so far at the major dynamic periods of globalization, with what I believe we should have in areas where globalization will not lead to convergence, which is coexistence. So in many ways, if you look at digital systems, I think plan A remains with convergence, but we also need a plan B, which is about coexistence when plan A cannot be the right solution. If we look in the direction, I think we have to distinguish between 2 very different aspects of digitalization. The first one is digitalization as a vehicle for exchange of information, of data, of digital products. The second one is digitalization as a process where digital products are progressively replacing traditional goods and services, and where production systems will lead to more and more digital products being exchanged, hence the big issues which have to do with their circulation. On the first side, on this first aspect, which basically have to do with what I will call digital infrastructures, the safety, the security, the resilience of which we need to ensure, this must stem from a sort of collective insurance against risks of disruptions, which is a technical issue which necessitates, in my view, quite a lot of technical cooperation, or also against risk of malevolent penetration, all these topics around cyber security, which also should be a major endeavor to ensure the compatibility and the convergence of these digital infrastructures. So that's for the first side, the vehicle of digital products, data, information. The second aspect is more, in my view, about keeping the exchange of data, of digital products, as open as possible, given that the differences in collective preferences, which I already mentioned, will or may, in many respects, become obstacles to an open exchange, thus leading to deleveling a playing field, which I think overall we should try and keep leveled. And I think it's a fundamental reality of the new digital world that while artifacts are usually ideologically, culturally, politically neutral, I mean, car is a car everywhere on this planet, a shirt is a shirt everywhere on this planet, and a banking service is a banking service everywhere on this planet. I think this is not true for digital systems, which are not neutral, which are ideologically, culturally, philosophically tainted, hence a long list of issues to be tackled, and which I don't have the time to describe in detail, but let's simply say that we have a first category of issues that have to do with, for instance, infrastructure, security, and safety, but also to regulation of online content of platforms. And this should stem for international cooperation systems, from agreements on norm, on discipline, on standards. We have the same sort of issue, in my view, in making sure that digital competition policies or issues having to do with portability of data are compatible, interoperable, and that on a global market, we have the necessary global common approaches. I think this is also true for cross-border flow of data or digital products, so that we avoid to fragment this global economic, social, political, digital ecosystem. That's for a first category of issues, and there are many of them. I think a second category has more to do with the fora where we need to produce these various international governance or cooperation streams, whether these fora can be traditional, interstate, among sovereigns, such as what happens in the World Trade Organization or in the International Telecommunication Union. So classical treaty-based, Westphalian, sovereign-based approaches to accepting common rules or standards. That's the first category. There's another one which we know exists in the digital ecosystem, which is the one that has to do with sort of private governance, private stream of a voluntary nature. Think, for instance, at the system of governance within which Internet was born, a private governance of both technical issues and more political issues, such as freedom of access or the running of Internet addresses. That's the second one. So the first one is sort of public, sovereign, state-driven. A second, which is more firm-driven, civil society-driven. And then a third one, which is the one, by the way, we are experiencing at the Paris Peace Forum since 2018, when this new approach to global governance was born, which is a sort of mix of the two, which is a system of governance where both sovereigns and non-sovereigns cooperate, maybe not to build a big cathedral that would contain everything, but in more purpose-led coalitions that lead to partial but implementation results, such as the one we've nurtured within the Paris Peace Forum on cybersecurity, or on protection of children on Internet, or on media freedom on Internet, for example. It would probably take much longer time than the one I have to explore these various avenues, but let me share with you the fact that this is, I think, the way we should go. And to conclude, I think this fundamental question, whether the next steps of globalization in the digital era, which is where we are and where we will be more and more in the future, is this digital system is as globalized as the previous one, or will it be much more fragmented? Can we conceive some sort of global digital welfare with enough convergence to benefit from the economies of scale of globalization, but some coexistence when digital systems cannot accept the standards of another one, a sort of digitalization with firewall? I think this question is open. It is ahead of us, and as in other aspects of the transformation of our world, what is at stake, I think, is the collective handling of these new digital, very complex nexus between technology, security, safety, openness, ideology, which is now developing. But let me share you finally my deep conviction, which was already there in the pre-digital world, but which I think is even more true in the digital world ahead of us. Globalization is efficient and painful. Deglobalization would be inefficient and painful. Thanks for your attention.